Hey Michael, it's been a while. As I will explain in my email, um, still a lot of things have been going on with me, and I apologize for not taking care of your progress the way I should have. Um, that being said, I've been thinking a lot about how our lessons were going, and also about the biggest challenge for you right now, which I think once you overcome it, that will be the biggest challenge, because I see a lot of good things happening, scales happening, you know, noticing technique, regular lessons, regular practice. A lot of good things are definitely happening. However, I think there is one issue which will really help you basically level up, take you to the next level, and it's kind of critical right now. That issue is how expressive your sound, your violin sound, really is. Now, obviously, this is very much related to technique, even you know how you hold the bow. I mean, hold the violin, how you related to how the pad falls down, this kind of stuff. But I'm going to lay out several solutions, and then if you find this video helpful, I think it would be great if you want to ask, if you want to discuss how you're combining it, the different solutions, which ones do not seem to work, which ones do seem to work, and we can discuss that further after you watch the video. The expressive sound in itself, right, has to do with mainly how you use the bow. I think there are several issues at hand, you know, beginning with the technical stuff. First of all, we need to take a look at your bow hold. You held the bow very relaxedly, nicely, but you hold the bow with your hand turned very much towards yourself, right? Very turned sometimes, and the fingers seem to very much together. Now, some of the things I've just mentioned, putting the fingers together, keeping the hand turned, they're not inherently bad things, but they need to be done right. The problem with doing this too much is that this forces you to only use your index finger as the finger through which you're going to put weight and pressure into and onto the bow. It doesn't allow the other fingers to be as involved in the weight control and tone control of the bow. So if you're very turned this way, and it also reduces, you know, the delicate control of the bow. In any case, if you're going to turn the bow this way, right, you would have to play this more Russian style. You would have to have your finger, index finger, touch the bow right here, not here on the knuckle or here, which is more Franco-Belgian, right? More Russian style would be right here. And in doing this, you would have to use bigger muscles and thus bigger strokes, faster bows in general. Not all people with the Russian bow hold, I guess, play like that, and everybody's a little unique, but that's how this bow hold works the best for most people. But if you're not going to touch, you know, have the contact point here, if you turn the bow too much, it becomes very difficult actually to apply pressure and weight, because here it's very strong, right? It's close, the knuckle is close to the hand, it's strong, well supported, but the farther you get away from it, it's the finger's weaker, strength is weaker, and as it gets weaker and weaker, and that finger is the only finger through which you can put weight or pressure into the bow, it becomes very difficult to even put any weight or pressure into the bow, let alone control that. So I would shy away from turning it too much, and also the issue of you keeping your fingers so close together. Sometimes I notice you're basically like this. Too close together is good, because as you know, we're trying to fight the instinctive urge to spread the fingers apart too much. As you'll see, like great violinists, I won't name them, but great violinists do play with their fingers spread apart sometimes because it allows them to use their strong index fingers more, to press more, and also feels like by spreading the fingers, you know, this is a very long, unbalanced stick. It feels like you would you have at least a few more inches under your direct control. Now, the reason we keep our fingers together is because no matter how much we spread our fingers, there's no way we're going to be able to control the entire bow. I mean, unless you have huge hands and you can literally stretch from one end to the another and hold. I mean, there's just no way. So as long as we're holding it here at the frog, there's going to be some amount of like a feeling of unbalance a little bit. And we're going to have to get used to holding the bow and controlling it from one end of the bow. If you're going to control it from one end, we might as well also find the shape of the hand that is probably the most strong, inherently structurally strong. Like this is not structurally strong because as the fingers spread apart, as you know, when people are not united, it's like the fist, right? You know, nobody makes a fist like this. It's not strong. You put your fingers together, clench the fist, right? And you make the fist. So the fingers come together, their strength, you know, is more focused, and the hand structure in itself becomes stronger than this very spread apart sort of structure. So that's a good thing that you're putting it together. However, if it's too close, what happens is the area then becomes so small, the points of contact, and this little change in, you know, a few inches or so is a big deal, because that, you know, when you talk about leverage, right, leveraging, you know, the other end of the stick, a few inches will change how heavy the bow feels by a lot. So the ideal is to try to keep the fingers together, but not completely together. Find that right balance of, you know, a little spread apart, but not too far so that the fingers aren't alone by themselves, right? So I've mentioned two problems: turning too much and keeping your fingers too close. That's what you tend to do. In order to solve it, this is the bow hold that I would most highly recommend, and I'd recommend that. Well, we'll get into practice of it later. So there are, as I probably mentioned in this video already, 3 distinct schools of violin technique traditionally, and because of that, yeah, there are. What I'm saying is not absolute. However, I do think this type of bow hold is the most effective for you right now. So your thumb, right, would be at an angle as usual, right? And you would put that thumb, anchor it at the tip of the black bump right there, like a hook. Middle fingers would come down, really wrap around the stick, and don't turn it too much. Keep it slightly more vertical than you're used to. Pinky on top to balance, and the index finger down. And instead of turning it very much this way, I would turn the hand a little more flat. So like, not like this, a little flat, okay? While keeping the thumb curled and this area round, right? And structurally, you need to realize that this is the center of your bow grip, okay? And the index finger, you know, bring it a little down so that the contact point with the bow is between this knuckle and this, right? Between those joints right there. So it would be right around here. This will bring your hand a little flatter. It'll also bring your the angle of your you know, the turning of your hand a little more flat as well, closer to a cello grip slightly. This will allow these middle fingers, the core of the bow grip, to engage more. So instead of being like this and only having, you know, the important 2 fingers be these 2, these will be your more involved or able to be involved. And the index, you won't rely as heavily on pushing through the index finger at all times. Right, so I would practice, if you get this bow hold, you understand it, right? If you don't get the shape and what I'm talking about at all, okay, let me know. But I would I would practice finding, right, the correct contact points. First the thumb, wrapping the two middle fingers so that they cover the black square, right? Not like this, they cover. The pinky contact point is on top, and the index finger, right, is between those two. The knuckles and knuckles joints, yeah. In any case, and the fingers spread apart around this much. Now I think your fingers are skinny like mine, so my spacing should be a good approximation for your hand as well. Once you find this bow hold, okay, I would, in terms of practicing it, obviously the key would be just to accept the fact that you need to practice the bow hold, right? It wouldn't be like, you can't be playing like Lalo, Sinfonia Española, playing Tchaikovsky, and you won't be able to focus on this, right? You're playing Paganini Caprice number 24. I mean, no matter how focused you are, you're going to have to do some focused practice on the bow hold. And one of the simplest exercises that I would recommend is simply just trying to find the bow hold. That's first, okay? And I would do this regularly. I would maybe put the bow down or hold the bow up like this and practice finding carefully, as if you are a curious George or something, carefully finding each contact point, making the bow hold until you're satisfied. And then shake your hand out, do that again, okay? And I would do that, if you don't want to do it, all day, you probably shouldn't. I would do it multiple times throughout the day, and I would do it every single day. So maybe, I know you're a very busy person, so the best way probably to ingrain this fast into your system is to probably do it, in the morning, sometime after school, and then right before bed. Okay, and I would find the bow hold maybe about 4 to 10 times at a time, unless you're very inspired and want to do like a gazillion, but regularly, 3 times a day. And this would probably be the best way to try to fix your bow hold without, just, focusing only on this for like half a year. Okay, so that's first. And then I would also do very simple bow strengthening exercises that beginners do, but, very helpful for us as well. For example, we'll do keep that perfect bow hold. Never let it go wrong, right? Don't go back to your old habits, right? And then do simple bow exercises like bow raises, right? One of my favorite combos is to do, let's say, 5 bow raises, okay? And you would spider crawl up the stick, okay? Come to the middle of the bow and hold the bow exactly the same way you would hold at the frog, okay? Don't kind of like just kind of semi-hold the bow correctly, but perfectly, right? And then I would climb up to the tip, hold the bow perfectly, do like 5 of these bow raises or whatever. Come down to the middle, do the same thing, crawl down to the frog, same thing. And with that routine, you would be actively training your fingers to find the bow hold and to get stronger and used to that bow hold in a more dynamic situation, right? So that's what I would recommend first, is to fix your bow hold. And number 2 is how you would use the rest of your arm as you draw the bow. As you draw the bow, you have a tendency to just draw the bow rather straight. I think it is not a bad thing. You play very gently, very politely. Like you draw the bow flat instead of any sort of curvy motion. Right? The second way I played wasn't more beautiful. It wasn't like I wasn't going for any particular hairpin or whatever. But as you can see, you probably heard even through this, lower level microphone, is that there was more weight in the sound, and that's because I was trying to scoop the bow more. So I was sinking, putting weight into the bow and releasing a little bit, and then sinking and releasing a little bit. Okay, so the main idea is expressed by teachers in many different ways, right? Some people will say, follow the shape of the bow, because if you look at the bow, right, the bow is curved like this. And so they're saying, instead of drawing it flat, why don't you follow the shape of the bow? And by doing so, you'll be scooping into the string, right? Other people will talk about this and will just say scoop, scoop, scoop. Other people will say things like, it is all figure 8 bowing, right? There is figure 8 bowing in this direction, right, where you're coming in and out, more out at the tip, more in at the frog. But also figure 8 and waves in the sense that, you know how when you want to be scooping and expressive, you can't just put weight in the bow, right? If you just put weight in the bow, what will happen? It will crush the string, right? It's the weight plus the release every time where you weight and then releasing of the weight. That is the combo that produces that expressive good tone. Okay, and so in order to do that, people will talk about, oh, you got to constantly be doing little waves. It's never flat. So instead of just one big scoop, like some people will talk about, oh, you got to do a little bit of wavy stuff all the time. Now I've tried practicing both, and I find merit in both. With a littler waves, you can get a more even sound, because if it's just one scoop, it sounds like nah, right? But if you do little tiny scoops all the time, where you feel like maybe you don't even hear them, wah, 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 it's that little, but you are still kind of gently putting extra weight, letting go of the weight a little bit, so that your bowing is always curvy. That has its own merits as well. It's fun to experiment with that. So that's the concept. Now in practicing it, I think there is one more factor that you need to take into consideration, which is the contact point of the bow. So as you try to scoop the bow, the scooping motion works really intricately with how controlled you can be with the placement of your bow, right? Simply meaning, can you keep it in one spot and draw a constant tone, right? As opposed to even little bit of that going on, right? How constant can you be? In order to practice this, there are, I think, a bunch of exercises. I would recommend, I would recommend practicing this in your scales, okay? So let's say you have G major scale, very easy for you, perfect tool to practice this with. You can, of course, apply these same ideas to open strings first, contact point, trying to do the wavy motion, with open strings first. That's always very good. However, if you constantly do this with scales, you get the added benefit of being able to do these long bow motions while also just playing with your left hand fingers, okay? So I would practice it this way. So when you start scales, I would do probably half notes, and I would pick one contact point. You can change this every day, but I would pick one contact point, and I would stick to that contact point just, perfectly, okay? So the bow would go, okay, it shook a little bit, but stay there as close as you can the entire time, entire scale, okay? And then back and forth, long bows like that, but perfect contact point the entire time. Now, if you want to go a step further, you can try giving a little bit of multiple hairpins within the bow stroke. So you can do this. And while you do that, try to keep the contact point as steady as possible as well. This will really help you feel the both the contact point as well as how to apply weight into the stick without always using big arms. Because when you need to do multiple swells within one bow, you're automatically forced to use feel the pressure and the weight in your hand more, okay? If it's just one, sometimes you can just get away with just being one big upper arm movement where you just kind of go boom like this, and then you never feel what it's like to do little swells with your fingers, which is the kind of touch control that we want to develop more of. So scales, I would do just single contact point, beautiful long bows. As long as there's hair on the bow, use it, full bows. And then I would, again, keep the contact point and then do little swells in the bow. I think Dunis, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I think Dunis used to teach this. He was one of the big proponents of this. And then finally, you could, if that goes all well, you could definitely do the same thing and also use vibrato in the scale. I know using vibrato in scale is sometimes sacrilegious, but this is for a specific controlled purpose. So this way, if you do this steadily, right, regularly steadily, I would commit significant amount of time. If you do it well, you can get away probably with just a few minutes, a few times of this, but it has to be perfect every day. And after several weeks of this practice, your bow control and the touch of your hand is going to improve. And once that improves, okay, what we're talking about, like you will be able to feel the bow's the scooping motion better. Okay. Oh, sorry. One more thing. Fourth way is instead of little scoops, you could do one big scoop. Okay, so instead of doing like, you could do one big like. Okay, I would do that only for a week or two because I don't want you to get into the habit of producing a C6 sound. But practicing that a little bit is important so that you can develop the feeling or get to know the feeling of what it is like to sink into the string. All right. So these are the technical issues that directly affect how expressive your tone is, and this is very critical, in my opinion, in your progress right now, because you're doing scales well, you're doing technical things, you're learning how to do trills better, all that kind of stuff. However, your sound is not robust and alive and expressive, and that's holding you back. Now, if you play everything you're playing right now with this wonderful, robust sound, whether it's Twinkle Twinkle, Dankla, or scales, you will sound like a first-class player playing those, not like a student playing those, and that's what we want. Okay, and then there are a few other ideas where I feel like you've been playing a lot of Baroque stuff, lighter stuff, and a lot of scales. Running scales, not the kind of scale practice that I talked about as much. And I think it's time for you to do heavier romantic repertoire, such as like Bruch concerto, or what else is there to think? Like something like, even if it's like not romantic era, like Passacaglia, right, where it's chords, right, as repertoire like that, where a thick tone is necessary for the music to come alive. And I think if practicing that type of repertoire, right, along with more focus on goal-oriented scale practice and more time on etudes, are going to all combine to kind of open up your arm, instead of just making it go straight one way, but different etudes, and just by doing them, not even specific ones. I have some specific ones in mind I can discuss with you later, but just by doing more etudes instead of just flat scales, that, and just by learning romantic repertoire and trying to go for the sound you hear in the recordings, that in itself will open up some doors in getting a thicker, more meaty sound. And then the final thing, again, is not related to technique, but is to take some of the stuff I talked about right now, romantic repertoire and etudes and all that kind of stuff, and to practice in a more boot camp style for a limited amount of time. So I don't know if you've noticed, but like when I used to play soccer or any sport, I used to practice regularly. However, whenever I went to a boot camp and practiced, let's say like 6-7 hours of that sport or something, the way my body responded to the sport or was moving in the sport changed. So it was more involved, more in contact, and there was more power behind my movements. And at where you are right now, I believe just by going through a boot camp with romantic repertoire, you can't do it in your school year, but if you have a little extra time in the summer, or if you're going to a festival, taking wrestling with romantic repertoire for many more hours a day than what you're doing right now, by itself will also change the physical familiarity and power that you bring to your instrument playing. So these are the ideas. And the last but not least, I would listen a lot and in a more observant manner, I suppose I could say, to great violinists. I will listen to somebody like Maxim Vengerov and observe how they use too much large muscles. I will listen to Mr. Rosan and observe how he uses small muscles, and yet through good technique, he is able to produce not a forced but solid sound. I would listen to especially the legendary violinists like David Oistrakh and all these people, and listen for that sound and get that tone ingrained or completely ingrained in your inner ear, and that will definitely help. All right, these are all my ideas that I think will help you, and I think this is the biggest issue. And I look forward to discussing this issue with you soon. All right, bye.